Happy Thursday and happy VS Code live stream Thursday. I'm Olivia, and I'm so happy to be back here hosting another live stream. This is my first time hosting this new year, so I'm excited to be back. See you all virtually in the chat. Definitely let me know where you're watching from. Say hi in the chat. We have a great live stream set up for you today. Actually, if you watched last week's live stream, this is a part 2. So we had Karthik from the VS Code Python team come on and basically talk about language server protocol, implementing a language server, a really cool formatter that he has that will actually let you create an extension for your favorite VS Code Python tool. So lots of really great stuff. This is actually going to be a continuation. So last week we left off at Karthik had created the extension, and this week he's going to have a lot more to show there too. So very excited to be here for that. Before we get started with him, though, we like to kick things off with a throwback TikTok Thursday.
Instead of coming over here and clicking the folder icon to give a folder a name, and then within that folder creating a file, we can just forget this method and next time go straight to creating your file and add the folder name right in front of it. Or you could even do multiple folders and save a lot of time.
I love that short. Reynold on our team created that. But it's so great because we love to just post these like little quick tips and tricks on our YouTube and TikTok channels. So you can kind of, there's so many things that you just maybe haven't realized you can do in VS Code. So I love any of those little shorts. That's like literally in like 10, 15 seconds, you learn something that's going to save you time. And I don't like just like clicking the new folder icon over and over again. So I always love that. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and bring on our guest today. Welcome him back. Hey, Karthik.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for being here again. I know Burke hosted you last week, but I caught up on the recording. I feel like you covered a lot of really cool things. I learned a ton. Python's not like my primary language, so it was really cool for me to see all the things you did just with working with your favorite Python tools to create a VS Code extension. It like blew my mind, and I feel like I learned a lot. So I'm super excited to hear what you have for us today as a continuation.
Yeah. So if you can, what we're going to talk about is finish up on where we stopped last time. So I have everything as is, so I haven't even committed any changes. So I'm going to just do a quick walkthrough of where we got to last time, and then we can continue from there. So I'm going to talk about some tools I use that make my life much easier on maintaining these extensions, and then how to test them, and what more features you can do. So where can you go look at examples of similar things that you can find out there that you can look at and get inspiration or look at for solutions to some kind of a problem that you're running into, or find an example implementation for some request that you don't know, and things like that.
Awesome. That sounds good. And for those of you tuning in, if you missed last week's, it was a great stream. Good thing is it's available on demand, so definitely check it out on our YouTube channel so you can catch up. But yeah, Karthik, it would be great if you could just kind of do a quick overview of what you did and then dive into some of that new good stuff.
Right. So last week, we used this button here to create a new repository out of the template that we have, and this is the repository that we created out of it. And then I cloned that repository in VS Code. And then we walked through this README and made the changes recommended in the README. That is, went through this getting started steps, created our environment, made changes to requirements.in, made changes to package.json, and then eventually started making changes to LSP server. So I'll show you my.
And I just want to like do a quick plug for because I was watching this and following along. It's so easy the way that Karthik has this template set up. because it's literally like you could just like search to do and then like kind of do like a quick checklist of like everything you do, follow these links. So it's definitely really easy to get started.
Right. So as you can see in this change, we added bandit as our linter that we were testing out, and then we made the changes to change various tool names and things, all to say bandit, and point to our repository and fix up our links. And all we had to do was do a couple of search and replaces, and then finally we started making change to the code. And again, it was a bunch of replacing all the tool name, the generic tool name that we have to bandit, and then getting rid of things that we don't need, and only keeping the parts of the linting features in the tool. So continuing on from that point. So last week we ran bandit on some files, and we saw that bandit had the option to return things in JSON, and then we took that JSON and parsed it. After parsing that JSON, we extracted various bits out of it to construct this diagnostics, and then we ran this and we saw how diagnostic shows up. So we can do a build again. So I'm just going to do Ctrl+Shift+B to start a build.
And while that's building, if you could just real quick, so Bandit is a tool that will scan for vulnerabilities, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So the main idea behind doing this is that I don't want people to think like you just need one tool. You can have as many tools as you want in your extension. So usually, when people use various linters, they specifically turn on or turn off particular linters. So our idea behind making each one separate is so that people can create their recipe, let's just say, for their repository however they want, right? So they can have bandit as a linter or not. It's up to them.
Okay.
So then again, we don't have official bandit extension. That's because there are already extensions out there that are supporting this linter. So rough is one of them. So if you install rough, it has the bandit linter rules, so it'll do the same. You'll get the same results with that.
Okay, cool.
So the build is done, and I'm gonna just debug this extension only just to show you some things.
And I noticed that you're using VS Code insiders. Is that generally what you use when you're doing extension development?
Yes.
Okay.
I use VS Insiders a lot.
Cool.
For two things, it gives us both an opportunity to try out new features, and also to test out our things before we ship. So we get to have an idea of if everything is working with the new VS Code and things like
Awesome.
that. So yeah, you can already see Bandit.
Can you zoom in a couple levels? The new window is a little smaller. Sorry. Yeah, that's perfect.
So you should be able to see the Bandit rules. So this is what Bandit found and complained about, and then we show it. So you can see the output in the logs as well. So this is the log for Bandit, and you can see that all of this is automatically created for you when you use that template. Okay. So that's the benefit of working with that template, is that we do all of this handholding for you and have everything ready so that you can work only on the Python parts of it. But it's not a limitation. So I just wanted to show yet another interesting thing. So I have added here no QA this thing. This code doesn't really belong to Bandit, but belongs to Rough, that is using same Bandit rules. But what I wanted to show was that the kind of experience that you can provide to people. So when I hover over this particular code, it actually gives you more information on what's the problem.
Okay.
Right. So you could, like in your extension for your favorite linter or your favorite tool, you can provide these kinds of like hover views and give more details on what's going on. So let's just say that you decided to write a refactoring extension. Like you can highlight a bunch of code and say, hey, you probably could refactor this better and show something like that. There is actually there are actually Python refactoring tools. There are a bunch of tools that I have specifically designed for doing code refactoring, and you could connect those like this. I think PyRefact is one of them.
I love anything that like those hovers where it's like I don't have to go and like Google what the thing is. It's like it gives me that extra information like already in the editor. That's always so handy.
Right. And then so here you can see a link, right? So every issue also has a link, so that you can basically click on it and it will open up to the page on this particular tool's explanation of what that issue is and how you can fix it and things like that.
Okay, cool.
And the way we provided that link was here. Like we said a code description, and we provided a link to more info, and that more info was available in the thing. So you can see here for every issue, they have a link in there.
So you're essentially just parsing the output from Bandit to make it VS Code friendly, like basically integrate it into VS Code essentially.
Yes.
So you can take what properties they already have and then echo them out, make any changes if you want to. Like, for example, I know you all added a little emoji into that information last week. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's basically just like, okay, we have this tool that I really enjoy using. I know that it gives me this. Let me go ahead and bring that into VS Code, and just kind of working with what Bandit already provides, but then bringing it into VS Code.
Correct. So changing the shape of the way I think about it is changing the shape of the output from there to the shape that VS Code understands.
Okay.
So here we had JSON output, right? And many a times you might have a tool that does not have JSON output. It will probably have a well-structured output that you can parse. And in the original template, before I made the changes, so let me show you before the changes were done. There are some examples here. Like for this is a Flake8 example where we can set the outputs format, and then there is a regular expression that we can use to parse that formatted output. So there will be something similar in various tools that allows you to format the output a particular way, and then you can parse that out. And to write these regular expressions, I use, let me bring up one of the tools that I use in this page. So I use this one, regex 101. This I find this very useful to paste in regex rules here, and then try out different options and see whether the rules work out correctly. So as an example, we can try this out. If I can copy it from my template, it's a lot easier. So
yeah, I feel like anything that lets you test your regex, because I mean, I don't know about y'all. Drop in the chat if you love writing regex. But I feel like I always somehow get it like slightly off, and then I'm like, what is going on?
yeah, and this will basically help you look at the content and better understand. So like the shape of this I think is going to be something like you're gonna need error, and then followed by some like message, something similar. So this I think it's commas. That's why I'm getting it wrong. So in this one, it's probably a bunch of commas. followed by colon. There you go.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
So once you have it working right, it'll highlight and you can experiment, and then you can actually you can debug your regex here as well. So it has steps that allow you to, it goes over the detailed steps, and then you can use the code generator and have it generate the basic example for you that you can just copy paste and start working with. But the template already has most of this, so you just need to get your regex right, and you should be able to get most of it out from there. So yeah, that was that part of it. So once you have all of this done, right, the next part would be to make sure that you have this working consistently, and you have your tests and CI and everything working right. So let's work on the tests. So the template by default has some tests in it. So let me just configure it's by default PyTest. So I'm gonna say PyTest, and yeah, I think it recognized it already. All right. So I wanted to show you what I have. So in the template, there is just one example for you to look at for various, for the two cases that the template implements. One is a formatting example and a linting example. Since we are doing a linter, we can get rid of this one.
Okay.
And we can focus only on the server, sorry, linter. And what this particular thing does is it kind of simulates VS Code. So this is completely written in Python. So what it does is it acts like a LSP client, but in my case, I've designed it to work like VS Code by using this VS Code defaults. You could add more. So if you want to support other IDEs, it's just the initial request with lots of various settings, basically saying that VS Code supports this thing, this other thing, like whatever.
Okay.
All of these are just saying that like publishing diagnostic, it supports these kinds of diagnostics, like text synchronization, like it supports these kinds of text synchronization,
Okay.
right? Like it's just saying that what VS Code IDE supports.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so if you were doing a different editor that you wanted to test out or something,
Right.
you would
So
then
you
just
could create a different setup for that. And what it does is basically says, hey, it'll start the server for you and then establish the communication. So we have all of this code sitting in the template, and all you basically need to do is update your diagnostic data here, right? And that would just do your test. So let's just run this. It'll fail because all of our things are different, and we can basically see the results and then look at what we can do with the output.
Okay.
So here it turns out that we ran this sample.py and then it came out empty, right? So we were expecting a bunch of things, but like it came out empty. So let's go look at sample.py. So it's test data sample.py. So this sample doesn't seem to have any problems that Bandit can report, but it has other problems that other linters are reporting.
Oh, okay.
Right? So let's get rid of that and let's introduce a Bandit error.
Okay. So that basically you want to put like an actual like test case in here that would trigger whatever tool your extension's using.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to say use.
And all these files are part of the template, right? Like the sample.py, all these test files.
Right.
Cool.
And this should generate some errors. So let's rerun the test. And this time we should get some errors. Wonderful. Now you can see that we did get errors, but they don't match our expected. Right? And as you can see, the output is very the output has a lot of stuff. So what I would do for brevity, I'm just going to copy paste, but like we should really be like making sure that everything matches correctly and like do it right. I'm also going to get rid of this that we had.
Yeah, so you don't deal with the Unicode.
Yeah, testing will be harder.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna take, when I say copy paste, I'm just gonna copy paste from the output.
So it's basically like step one in that sample.py, make sure that you have something that will trigger your linter, whatever tool you are using. And then step two, also make sure that you're then comparing what you expect that linter, what that tool to output with what it actually did.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and then I'm just changing this absolute value here to right. So right now I don't have a formatter installed, so I'm gonna make sure I install black formatter. So it's gonna install that, and once it's ready, we can have this text in a formatted way. And now, now that I have made these changes, let's try and see whether it will work. Still failed for some reason. Oh, right. So we had copied with the emoji.
Oh. Okay. That emoji is coming back to bite us.
Exactly. So
this is
my
live though.
the only reason I say that we should try and keep it simple is it creates whenever let's just say your linter updates or things like that, then you will run into, if you are making too many changes to linter output, then you will have to basically you will have to manage the cost of dealing with these changes, right? So when you're working with lots of linters, then you run into, when you're working with lots of extensions and tools, you often run into things that keep getting updated, and you'll have to now deal with these nitty-gritty details. So I would usually try and avoid making too many
so
changes.
that, because I mean, you mentioned earlier that you kind of think of it as taking the shape of Bandit of whatever tool you're testing, and then changing it into the shape of VS Code. So like you can technically make some like customizations along there, like add emojis, whatever, but you might end up regretting it too if you're not thoroughly testing and like keeping up to date with what that might.
Yeah, the way I think about it is it's maintenance costs. Like if you make too many updates, then you have to maintain that extra bit that you'll have to deal with. And one of the points of this template is to reduce your maintenance cost on it, so that like you can focus more on the things that you are interested and like to work on, and reduce the costs on working on things that you are not as interested. So let's try and see if we can get this test running.
There we go.
All right. I like seeing things green. So now you know how to here's a sample test, and you can just basically build on top of this to add more tests for various behaviors that you want to implement in your extension. So you can use this as a sample. Now I'm going to talk about another tool that we have with testing itself. So I said that we have a thing that simulates how VS Code does start the server and how VS Code works with the thing. It's this LSP test client. That's the an implementation of a very basic LSP client that starts your server and then establishes a communication protocol and then starts sending messages back and forth.
Okay.
The important file here is this one. This has a few requests implemented in it, so it handles shutting down the LSP, starting up LSP, and stuff like that. But it has few of these requests implemented for you. But if you want to support more capabilities in your extension, you might just need to update this if you want to test it.
Okay.
So, for example, there is code action resolve, and which is a code action related thing, which is not there in the extension template. But if you want to add, you can add. I've just added these as samples on how to make the request response part work.
So you
for
might
anything
end up needing to like look at these files and change it a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're actually not bound to just LSP. Like, this is the way you have to think about LSP is that there are some established way of doing things for like formatting, linting, and things. But if you have something unique for your extension that is not already in the LSP's definition, you can create that. And in that case, you will just have to manage both the sides yourself. That's all.
Okay.
So LSP allows you the freedom to expand and extend. So you don't have to extend its basic functionalities.
Okay.
Right?
That
So
makes
you
sense.
don't have to be limited to what just LSP provides.
This test client code is so interesting to me that you can basically like mock up your own LSP session and then just create that session in your test code, and then you're good. Like it's crazy. I mean, how much your point to this was kind of the template helps take out a lot of that maintenance and kind of lets you focus on the parts you want to focus on and not so much like the kind of bare bones stuff. So I think it's really awesome that we just have all this code that is kind of there, and that, like you said, you can modify if it doesn't have quite the functionality you need. But out of the box, you can do so much, as we've seen from your bandit test.
Right. So that's the part about like all the Python aspects of it, right?
Okay.
Then there is one more thing. So you have package dependencies. Just by adding the bandit and the language server protocol and things like that, we now have all of these packages that we depend on, right? And these packages update regularly.
Okay.
You also have this TypeScript script aspect of it, because the extension is written in TypeScript, and it depends on these packages for dev dependencies, and these packages for when you're packaged and this is what you would be deploying. But like, so there are a bunch of packages that you depend on.
Okay. And did this automatically get updated when you built it after you had specified, oh, we're using bandit, or did you modify this based off the dependencies?
So these are not modified. So these are part of the template. So they will come with the template with whatever version that would have been updated on the template. We try and keep the template as updated as regularly. Every month we update all the packages on them.
Gotcha.
But what I wanted to show was that you can use, so this is yet another tool that I use to make life easier. So there is something called Nox. So what Nox allows you to do is create a bunch of basic, your like regular common steps that you do, the basic things like, oh, I want to update all packages. Well, you just run these couple of commands to update packages, add them into Nox. And then what you can do by that is you can say, so I'll show you the couple of them that come with the template, and then you can add more. So like I have this one that is basically update packages. So what I do is I just say, let's commit this first so we can see the changes. So initial changes to commit this. And now we can say aux. So what I have done with this update packages, let me see if I can find that. Update packages is I update all the Python packages, and then I try and find any updates to the npm packages, and I've added all of that. So you don't have to specifically go and run something to find, or like, to make your life much easier. So reducing maintenance cost.
I've never heard of Nox. This is super handy. So it's basically like you can then just on the command line run Nox, and then whatever command block you want to do. So you did update packages, and that's going to run those three, this little function that you've specified here.
Right. So like, it'll do the npm install, and like you can, I mean, I have written all of this out because these were the steps that I was regularly doing. So I just took all of them and put it in there to make it a lot more easier.
Okay.
Like for example, linting, right? You want to make sure that your code is in perfect shape when you're committing and things like that. And these were the steps that I used to run. You can also have all the extensions installed so that your code is perfect as you're typing and finishing. But you always want to run a check before you put anything in. So this just does that. And then what I have done is in all of the extensions for the CI, all I need to do is just in CI run Nox lint or Nox test. And you don't have to like change your code in so many different places, like change your code for CI, change your code for yourself. You don't have to do that. You just have one place where you define everything, and then you just have it run things for you.
Okay. So it's basically like this Nox file is like kind of your single source of truth for like almost like those like scripts is not quite the right word for it, but it's kind of like a script, right? If like you're running it and it's going to invoke all these steps. So you can edit all the steps there. That's what's going to be. And then in anywhere where you would be running Nox, then it's just like you'd always be saying Nox update packages. And then if you had to change what it was doing there, you would just have to change in this one file.
Right. So like you could basically have a cron task in your GitHub Actions that runs it once a month or once a week, and it'll update all the packages and create you could have it, you could write more scripts, like more steps to just create a pull request for you out of this. Because on the GitHub Actions, I think you have the GitHub command line. So once this does its changes, you could basically wrap all of that up into a pull request.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, automate most of your things that you don't want to do.
Yes.
Right. And
work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. So there's a build package is the command that I would use to create the v6, the final package that you would deploy to marketplace, or if you want to share it somewhere else, right?
Okay.
That would be that's like your setup.exe or your installer, basically.
Okay.
So all of that is available in the template. So it does.
Oh my gosh, you thought of everything in this template.
Oh yeah, I mean we had this template for about a year, and we got feedback from various people, and then we also saw the things that we repeatedly do, and then we are like, okay, we are going to minimize this kind of things and try to get it to as small of a set of changes that users have to do to go from having a tool on that they like to having an extension in the extension store. We had users go do this within a couple of hours. So we wanted to get it down to that time frame.
Makes sense.
My manager keeps saying like it should be as much as you spend one afternoon to get your thing done. So that was the kind of the goal around.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of like the guiding principle throughout this as you are adding new features and everything. Like, okay, let's just make everyone's life as easy as possible.
Right. So this is basically the big all the parts of the extension template. what I want to show next is I wanted to go back into here and wanted to talk about like what you can add as features. So and where you can find more things to look at so that you can get inspiration to add more features or examples of how to do certain things and like all of that. So I'm going to talk about that part. So when you think about LSP features and you want to read more about it, like adding a new LSP feature is as simple as just these things. You just put a different one here, and you can go to definition here. Here you can see a
Okay.
whole bunch of
Wow.
features that you can
Yeah.
add to your LSP, right? But where do you go read about them? What how do you know whether what you're doing is right? Things like that. We will talk about that right now. So you would go to this website, which is Microsoft's official language server protocol page, and there in specification you'll find details on all the various features and uh, like how the request and response should look like and what you would be adding and what they mean. Like I'd earlier shown hover, like where we hovered over code and it showed bunch of help, right? That comes through this particular feature. So
Okay.
you basically say hover request, and then you add uh, your request will have these if you look at hover params, these are the items that you will have in the hovers. Hover will when you hover over something, VS Code will send this information to you, to the server. You take that and you figure out what you want to show, and then you give a response back which contains the shape and details of whatever um, uh, particular response you want to send back, and then that's what will be shown on the screen. So you can see that with the content you can send
Can you
mark
zoom in actually just like a couple levels? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. So is this enough?
That should be good. Yeah.
Right. So like markup content. So in the case of the code that we saw, you would actually be sending back markup content, and that
Okay.
would why it was showing things like all those headings and paragraphs and code and all that stuff.
Okay. So that's how it gets
Yeah.
kind of formatted to where it can then get the shape that you want, essentially.
Right. All this was hand wavy. Like, no, we were like, okay, I want to do this. Where is the example? Like, I would say with rough, if you want to exactly see their example, you can go to the rough LSP, their implementation of this, and you can go in here and you can go into server. And if you just look for hover, you can see how that was implemented here. So
Okay.
that exact thing that I showed, it comes from here.
Okay.
So the rough has this rough is a linter. It has this explain feature that will return some content, and they have taken that content and they basically send it back like this.
Okay.
And we saw here in the specification, all you need is this content, right? And it'll take care. So that's what you see here.
Okay. So if you end up like you're doing this and you're maybe not looking at examples of like rough, for example, to see, okay, how do I need to do this? You should be consulting that LSP documentation for what it's expecting to return. So like if you're like, oh, this format looks really weird, why does it look like this? Make sure that you are giving it the contents that it expects, essentially.
Right. And then you can and for examples of various things you can see here, and rough implements a lot of interesting things for its tooling. Then we also have, so with the Python extension, we ship Jedi language server. It's so there are two language servers. So there is Jedi language server and Pylance. Jedi language server is purely Python based, and it actually works using Jedi, which is a package that for analyzing Python code, and it's all written in Python. Pylance is a type analysis based language server, and it's all written in TypeScript.
Okay.
And so, but this Jedi language server, we are actually using the same system to make it work with the Python extension. So it underneath, Jedi language server uses Spyglass as its framework, and it uses language server protocol to communicate. And this provides a different set of features. So this implements things like completions, and again, it has hover and a few other things, but like it's more catered towards being a language server. So you can do things like rename things, you can find references to things, or you can search document symbols, things like that. And you can use this, you can see this as a reference to implement various features. Like if you wanted to see how rename worked, so you can look up how rename needs to be done.
Okay.
Right. Basically, with rename, you get rename parameters, which contains old and new names, and like the range of items. You take that, and then you basically return a workspace edit that contains all the changes, like which document,
Okay.
like which you can, like, because when you're renaming, you might change multiple documents. So you basically return an array of documents that you are changing and all the changes in those documents. So you return back this object, right? And you can see how that object needs to be constructed, all that. Like, I'll let people explore, like, so you can get ideas. I don't want to fit something in your mind.
Yeah.
So,
And for everyone watching, all these links are going to be in the video description too. So we've been putting them in the chat as well. But definitely check out the video description also when you watch this back, and it has all the links here.
right. So here's another example. So there is the refactor inline and refactor extract. These are like code actions. You can provide more custom code actions if you want. Like, code actions don't have to be the ones that are defined. You can provide your own custom ones. But you can see how you can say, oh, these are the 2 code actions I support, right? So you can kind of give the IDE details on like the kind of things that you support, so that it can show in its UI, okay, you support this thing, so we'll allow you to do. It'll show things like, you'll see light bulbs and things like that in all these places, depending on the scenario. So
this is so cool, because I feel like, I mean, obviously anyone who uses VS Code, right, you see all these things. I think it's so cool to see, like, okay, this is where these are coming from. Like, they don't just like appear. Like, there's a lot going on under the hood, processing language servers to get to say, okay, yeah, this is when we would show the light bulb. This is what it should be saying when you click on it, things like that.
Right. So you get the idea, right? And but the thing is, you can basically use anything to. All you need to do is handle the request and response. So anything in between is up to you, right? You can use a linting tool or a formatting tool or some package or some AI model that you built, and you want to have it produce some output for the user. Anything that you can think of, you can make that work with this thing. The part that we wanted to make easy for you is that take everything out except for the parts that are in Python that you are going to be interested in, the novel aspects of it. Everything else feels like boilerplate. So we moved all of that out into a template. And this is basically my demo. That's what I wanted to show. All of the various tools, all of the bits and examples, where to find, what to find, all of that.
This is super handy. Like I said, like, I love seeing kind of this more like under the hood. Like, this is what's going on behind the scenes. Like, there's so much that happens. And, I think it's really cool when it's like, okay, when you install an extension to like kind of see, okay, this is everything that it's doing and that it's processing and how you're getting that. But to you as a user, right, you're just seeing, okay, this nice linter, this nice, formatter, whatever it is. But there is so much that's going on. But then you make that even easier if you actually are looking under the hood to where you're just focusing on the cool stuff, so to speak.
Right.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, like for example, right now while I was doing this stuff, I didn't have formatter installed, so I installed black formatter, right? And that is also the exact same thing. It just uses the same stuff. Let me expand this. Same stuff as every other extension. So if you all of these are based off of this template. So the rough, they shipped the same template. They took the same template, built on top of it, and then they realized that they wanted it to be they wanted to separate it out in certain ways, that they wanted to uh, use it with other tools as well. So they did it as a separate package. So they took all of the Python parts, put it in a separate package, and now they have 2 repositories working on it. But as I said, like, you can modify this to your heart's content, but this just gives you a starting point so that you are unblocked from some of the boilerplate stuff that often makes it harder for people to get into this kind of things. And once you are more familiar with it, then you can later take this and tear it apart and do it however you like. But yeah, like in general, like this the idea with this template was to give you a head start, but not to say that this is how we have to do things. You can later do it however you want. This is just for you to get started on and get some experience with using the building extensions for VS Code and building extensions for VS Code, specifically using Python-based stuff.
That's so interesting. I feel like I mentioned at the start, like Python's not my primary language. Like I feel like though I could go and just get started with this like right now, and I would have something functioning, like, which is really cool. So I know you also mentioned that, this is something you've been working on for, over a year, and, it's been a lot of refining based off what people are saying would help them. If people are trying this out, would you just recommend, filing an issue maybe on the repo if there's something that they'd like to see in it?
Yes.
What's kind of a good way for that? Okay.
That would be a good place. One thing we have tried to do is keep it very minimal, like just have 1 or 2 things that it does, so that it doesn't overwhelm people. Because the moment you start adding anything more, things start to get bigger, and often when you're starting with things, having it minimal is helpful. And that's why I was pointing out various other extensions as examples that you can go look at for how to do things, look at as ways to do things. And we are open to any ideas. Like if you feel like, hey, this could be something that is very useful for starters and it would be good to have in there, we can definitely take that.
Okay, awesome. We do have a question that's kind of on general VS Code extension development, asking about a dev container setup for creating VS Code extensions. Is that something that you recommend with VS Code extensions, extension development, or?
So,
yeah.
I think someone contributed a dev container for the template. I don't remember. There is one dev container set up for the template itself.
Oh, nice.
I think. Yeah. If not, I will see if we can add one. But there are. So if you look at, I think, Pylint extensions repository, you should see a dev container set up for that one.
Okay.
And so, since these are all VS Code extensions, they need to have the minimum requirement for all the TypeScript based extensions plus Python stuff. So you could just use the the node part of it and get rid of that. If you are just building a TypeScript based extension, you can just get rid of the node part and use just that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, that was a great question. I know, Karthik, you're just saying anything that kind of makes it easier to get started, and dev containers are a lot of times one of those ways that can make it easy to get started if you can just start up the code in there.
Yeah, I can totally see that, like having the right version of Node, right version of NPM, and right version of other packages is always a mess when you're that, right? And dev containers will make that very easy.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than when you're like, oh yeah, this is just going to work, and then it just doesn't. So yeah, just getting kind of your environment in, a consistent state is one of the huge perks of dev containers.
Yeah, I don't see it here, but I think that's a very good idea to add one for the template itself.
Awesome.
I
Cool.
did see someone contribute something. I might be mistaken, but I
Yeah.
think that's a good suggestion to do, to put a
Awesome.
dev container on this one.
This is why I love open source. I mean, it's just like literally like, I mean, you're a testament to this. The whole VS Code team is, right? Like we love reading any comments, questions from people. And it's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and see if we can implement that. It really is feedback first, focused on that development, which is really cool to see.
Yeah. The other thing is often I go back and look at some of the videos and often find like, okay, that felt really difficult for some reason. So then we file a bug and you're like, why did that experience wasn't smooth?
Mm-hmm.
So it also helps looking back at things. So while we're doing it, we don't notice it. It's just our brain just wants to get from point A to point B. So it's just moving through all those steps somehow, and then the friction is forgotten. So looking back at the video also has helped us find the friction points as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, this is so like amazing. Everything you showed. I know that this was part 2 also. So definitely if y'all haven't checked out part 1, make sure to do so. All of this is available on our YouTube channel on demand. But yeah, Karthik, is there anything else you want to end on or show before we wrap things up?
No, this is it.
Okay. Cool. Thank you so much. I mean, this is it. There's so much. This is so great. I know we've had you also on our release parties as well, showing off really cool Python things. So I'm sure we'll have you back on, honestly, in no time on the live stream. But it's been such a joy having you on both last week and this week. So I just want to say a big thank you for coming on and showing this off.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. And thank you, viewers, for watching. As always, we're so happy to have you here. Like I mentioned, part 1 of this is available on demand on our YouTube channel, and then you can also watch this part 2 on demand. So yeah, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's showing up on the screen right now. And then we also started the day off with a TikTok Throwback Thursday. Make sure to subscribe to us on TikTok as well. Follow us there so that you can see kind of cool tips and tricks. And with that, thank you again, Karthik. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back next week with another live stream. So we'll see you then.